Hello there everybody, yo soy Alonso y están escuchando el podcast de Salón de Idiomas. Hola, ¿qué tal están? Bienvenidos a un nuevo episodio del podcast de Salón de Idiomas.
Muy buenas, ¿qué tal?
Bueno, aquí como pueden ver, aquí está Rox. Y bueno, today actually we're gonna just focus a little bit more on, just improving our English. And
yeah, I will say on how to really boost your English. Like how to upgrade your level in a short time. And whether that's possible, that's a different thing, yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Definitely, we have to make a little disclaimer here. We are not selling something like learn English in 5 minutes to become as fluent as the Queen or something along those lines. No, that's not happening.
Yeah, definitely. There's no such a thing as a magic pill, but there are certain things which actually encourage and help us improve our level. And we're going to talk about them.
So yeah, one of the first things that I believe that is necessary to talk about is talking. Since there are plenty of people who actually have a well understanding of the language, they are quite proficient when it comes to understanding whether it's listening or reading or even writing. However, when it comes to opening their mouth, then things get a little complicated. So how can we perhaps try to deal with this aspect a little bit better?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most difficult things when it comes to English. It's like how to utter your thoughts in a coherent way and make yourself understood, and at the same time not make mistakes, and basically try to be fluent. And this is, as you said, definitely one of the biggest challenges when it comes to learning any language, right? We're talking about English. Well, there are actually many ways of trying to overcome the fear and master the linguistic production, the oral production. I guess the basic one would be just to speak, right?
Yeah.
It's like, just go ahead, just try to say like the few words you have in your repertoire, just say them, okay? No matter the context, no matter the topic you might be dealing with, try to convey those words. And then eventually you will link them with other conjunctions, and eventually you learn how to conjugate the verbs and stuff. But the most important thing is to utter those words first.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing, since, for instance, if what you're trying to accomplish is just being able to communicate, then don't worry that much about making like silly mistakes or something like that.
Yeah.
Since like eventually if you're communicating with somebody else, this person is probably going to be able to understand what you're trying to say, regardless of if you're making like a couple of minor silly mistakes or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, try not to get overwhelmed with the mistakes you might be making. However, now this is a bit difficult because as a teacher, we encountered two different types of personality, if you like, right? So the first one is usually like the vast majority of people who will come here and will be a bit afraid of actually speaking because they are too reluctant and afraid of actually making mistakes, right? And it's a normal starting point. And eventually when they start like conveying more words in English, like having more dialogues and conversations, they do it well, right? But then we encounter the other way, the other part, where it's like people who are like really outspoken and speak their mind, no matter whether it's in Spanish or in English, and they have this ease of uttering the words. However, if they make mistake, it's really difficult to stop them and to make them go on the right track. It's like, okay, we're going to be talking about this, that you're definitely speaking, but mind you, stop a bit and try to pay attention to those mistakes you might be.
Yeah, exactly. Since it's necessary to find the balance. Actually, when I come across this kind of individuals, they tend to lack a little bit when it comes to reading or listening. Since you're talking all the time. So when are you going to start listening?
Right. So I guess it boils down to a matter of personality, and striking a balance might be a bit challenging at the beginning. So that's where actually having a nice, a good guide or instructor actually helps you to know how to start with how to work on your oral expression, right? But you have to strike a balance between losing the fear of speaking and paying attention and be a bit conscious of your own mistakes, right? Because it's not about, okay, just speak and speak and speak. It's about paying attention as well. And stop a bit and try to figure out that perhaps here you need to use an S for a third singular person. You have to have an ED because you're talking in past, right? So yeah, it's about the balance.
Yeah, certainly. And now to focus a little bit more on the side of those who are struggling with just conveying their ideas. Now, it sounds all too pretty to say, well, you just gotta be a little more confident. Now, what kind of a little more hands-on, something that we could do in order to perhaps try to achieve this? What kind of things can you recommend?
You mean to achieve fluency, right?
Yeah, to at least start speaking, or at least trying to do those baby steps if you want.
Yeah, okay. So the bedrock of a fluent conversation would be to have enough lexis, enough vocabulary, which to start, you have to start with some vocabulary, right? So what I recommend is, of course, read a lot. And then in your classes, your teacher should be providing you with enough vocabulary, mind you, not necessarily extremely difficult vocabulary, depends on your level. I mean, if you're pursuing a C2, that's definitely a really high level vocabulary, but have enough vocabulary, enough repertoire of words, and some topics, and you're going to be using that vocabulary in the topics, but you have to force yourself to use those expressions and those specific use of English expressions. And it's starting with that first, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I definitely recommend when it comes to learning vocabularies is it's just that, to my mind, learning the words isolated, it's really hard. So what I always recommend is that whenever you're trying to learn a word, try to use it at least in 3 sentences. So in that way, learning sentences, even though that there are more words, is easier than just learning one word and that's it.
Definitely, because we're talking about acquisition. We are not talking about learning. Okay, so it's not a matter of learning by heart groups of vocabulary and groups of different glossaries of words and stuff. No, it's not about that. That's not how a language works. You need to, as I said, learning is extremely helpful in this case because you get to grasp. It's a really helpful input because you get to grasp all that vocabulary that you know it intuitively, right? But then if you are given vocabulary, specific vocabulary in a class, and you're given topics, and you're asked to do certain things, and you have to use that vocabulary no matter what, as you well said, the more you repeat that and the more you integrate those words in your conversations or in whatever activities you might be doing, you will end up really absorbing them, right? So that's a really nice way. I mean, it's about having fun when learning. It's not about taking notes. It's not about filling the gaps as traditional on a paper sheet. Okay, it's about having the vocabulary and then having topics and having with whom and to whom you can speak to. Okay, so it's about that.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, most of the time, if you are trying to just talk about the things that you like, eventually it would be just easier to learn those words as well. Mm-hmm. And talking about that. Now, even though that you might have the vocabulary or you might be really enthusiastic about talking, I don't know, like the environment if you want. Sometimes we still struggle when it comes to trying to just explain a little more complex idea. If I ask you a question that requires an answer that is not yes or no, and it kind of like a little analysis. There are some hurdles that we need to overcome. To my mind, one way is to actually plan ahead how you are going to speak. One thing that I have found that is really, 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 really useful is trying to just like answer by giving like a general statement or something along those lines, and then trying to just explain what you are saying by using like something a little more physical or even talking about yourself.
Yeah, so I get your point. Basically, being acquainted or at least interested in what you're actually talking about, and not necessarily making it that difficult, enables you to start off, right? Enables you to say, okay, I'm capable of expressing myself, perhaps not with the range of vocabulary I would like, for starters, but enough for me to actually, deliver a message, right? So it's about that. I believe there are like certain things which lie at the heart of a proper learning and the proper the delivery of speech. And these are, as we have said, motivation. That's extremely important. So that's where educators play an important role. Like we as teachers play a fundamental role in catching people's attention and making them really enjoy the process, the learning process. That's like the most important thing, because then they learn without even realizing they do. Now, the second one is as well like being acquainted, which is actually pretty similar to motivation, because the more acquainted or familiar you are to this specific thing, like topic, the more likely you are to be relaxed, laid back, and therefore more concentrated. And then there's another important thing, and you can add many more things if you like. I mean, I really welcome you to tell me more things. One of them is repetition. And I believe repetition, as everything in this world, is going to be really helpful in the long term. Perhaps at the beginning, you might think, oh my God, it's so mechanic. I have been using passives for 3 days in a row in my speaking lessons. Yeah, I mean, that might be a bit overwhelming, perhaps, like trying to use, I was told and people are believed and we are given plenty of choices, whatever. Using these passives almost on a daily basis for a certain period of time will actually enable you, like, to a cognitive level, to absorb those structures and eventually to use them naturally in your speech. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things we actually do in our English lessons. Repetition, and repetition within certain activities which are dynamic, entertaining, and you enjoy. And in the end, and I have seen it in other intensive courses we have been doing, because we're talking about like getting a boost of English in a short time. It's really, really helpful in the long run. We had people who started with this kind of training, like to boost your English, have this like language immersion, and later, after some months, when they would take up the training for an official exam, it was so great to hear them naturally use passives. Okay, it's like, oh my God, I don't even have to teach you how to use passive anymore, because they come out fluently. And that's because they were exposed for a certain time to repeatedly doing those and hearing the passives.
Yeah, definitely repetition is one of the pillars that we just gotta focus on. Now, another thing is perhaps, which is one of the biggest problems when it comes to trying to just reproduce or produce whatever, is the improvisation aspect.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, definitely. Improvising.
Yeah. So what are the tips that you might want to convey when it comes to improvising? Since like, I don't know, sometimes I have like students and I have to tell them, tell me a story with boat, fishing, red.
Give them random words.
I give them like random words, and then I like try to create like a little story. It doesn't have to like be really complicated. Just like, I don't know, like 3 sentences or something like that. And that's something that they really struggle with. How can we do this?
Okay, so there are like, I believe as an instructor, there are many ways and resources of enhancing your improvisation skills. The basic one would be to actually provide them with activities and games aimed to improvise. Like as you said, you give them like random words, and it's like you guys have to use all these words in a story you just make up on the way, or you give them a line and they have to create a story, and no matter how the story works out, it has to finish with a specific line you have given them beforehand, right? So these are like different games and techniques you use with them, right? But then there is another part which I'm really keen on, and I believe it's important as well when it comes to training for a language. And it's not necessarily focused on the language. It is in English, but not necessarily focused on, imagine, grasping plenty of vocabulary. It is about working on your cognitive skills, okay? So for example, at the beginning of the classes, we usually do that. At the beginning of the lessons, we play some games which are not that focused on English, but on working on their attention span and working on their creativity in the short term, okay? So imagine that we have like a bowl of paper bowl, okay? And we just say, okay, guys, now we're gonna be talking about, I will resume to passives, okay? Well, we are gonna be using passives. I'm gonna have this paper bowl in my hands. I'm gonna use a sentence in passive. I'm gonna throw it to whichever of you here it is in my class. And the ones who actually catches it has to come up with a sentence in passive on the way. So we work with this improvisation and this, like not knowing who's gonna be first, or who's gonna be the following one who's gonna be given, So it's working a bit on this uneasiness. Right, your tranquility is not the best. It's put here like you're working with it with the lack of tranquility, but it's actually really helpful because real life situations are like that.
Exactly.
Like sometimes you might be stopped on the spot. You have to answer certain questions that you had no time to think of. So as you well said, and I'm really along the same lines with you, improvisation is extremely important. So there are like different techniques and different games, and we usually use them in the classroom, and that's what actually makes them so dynamic and entertaining.
I have to admit that if I were in one of those classes when it comes to random choice of student, the first thing that I would do is avoid eye contact. I get so nervous when it comes to those activities.
It's really normal. I mean, everyone has a different personality, and you're pretty likely to want to chicken out or even to get cold feet. But having this like really nice rapport in the classroom, like with this environment you feel at ease with, and you joke, and we usually make jokes and tongue twisters, and you create such a vibe that you kind of make friends. Your classmates are going to be your friends, and the learning process is going to be like a common thing, a collaborative thing. And it's really, so in the end, you gotta lose this shyness you might be having because you feel at ease. And that's where we play an important role, make everyone feel at ease. But I believe now correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe that one of the things Salón de Idiomas stands for is with this environment we try to convey in the classes, and with this the rapport we create in the classes, like everyone make them feel at ease, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody has to just feel comfortable, and no matter what, we're just having progress, even if it's gonna be a little slow sometimes, or if it's gonna be like skyrocketed. That doesn't really matter. The main factor is just feeling comfortable, and yeah, like also acknowledging your progress. Definitely. Which is one of the things that, when it comes to improvisation, at least, one of the things that I do is always have kind of like a plan ahead. Even though that it's improvising, I kind of like plan my improvisation. For instance, when I am gonna talk about whatever crosses my mind, I speak about it firstly, and then I talk about myself. Like I just give like a personal anecdote in order to, I don't know, like to just explain this better, what I have just said. And then I come back to the very beginning to what I have just said, like, well, and that's why certain idea, that's why, and this is, for instance, what I find really useful when it comes to improvising.
It's really nice if you were to do it on the spot, you kind of gain time, right?
Yeah.
You gotta gain time.
Exactly.
I mean, every teacher has a different technique, and it makes them a bit different when it comes to your teaching instruction, right? I guess in my case, I've always liked to play a bit with the unknown and with the unexpected, and it's difficult because when you're on the spot, it's like, oh, what on earth am I gonna say now? Sometimes it happens even when you teach. It's like you go blank. You go blank, and you're supposed to. You're there. Everyone is listening to you, and you go blank. But I guess that it's been like having this repetition of constantly having to speak with people and doing that really enables you to, like to work really fast.
Yeah.
There are days when you're like,
certainly. Well, and when it comes to teaching, by the way, those who are listening, who are teachers, something that is necessary in these classrooms is giving feedback, regardless of it's gonna be positive or negative feedback. Do you have a specific approach when it comes to giving feedback, or you just like whatever you gotta say, you just spit it out?
You mean as a any kind of approach when it comes to how to give feedback?
Exactly.
As I told you, everyone has a different, as an instructor, and I think we're moving towards the way of instructing. Everyone has a different strategy, I guess. In my case, all the feedback I deliver tries to be like constructive, and I don't want to single out the student. It's like, you have done this and you have done that, and you and you and you, and therefore they might end up feeling singled out. Like, okay, I don't feel comfortable. So it's not about that. It's not about that. It's about talking more in plural. It's like, we all have to focus more on this and that. Okay, mind you, try to pay a bit more attention to this and this. Or would you mind repeating that again, just to make sure we don't make the same mistakes? I don't know. Like everyone has a different tip for that.
Yeah. My way is doing. I don't know if you have heard about this, like the feedback sandwich. I don't know if you have heard about that.
I'm not pretty sure. Yeah.
So it basically is that you start by like pointing out a couple of nice things that the student or the person has done. Then you, in the middle, that's where you give a little like more of the, perhaps like the harsh stuff, not necessarily harsh, but like the mistakes that you have made. And then you end up on a lighter note as well. Like you're trying to just convey something like a little more positive about it. Like perhaps everything has to be constructive, as you have said. However, that's kind of like how you do it. So that then you end up
layers. Right?
Yeah. So you end up having like a sandwich of feedback.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. Now that you're saying it, I admit I usually start with the positive things always. Like, great, you have used plenty of conjunctions, you have used plenty of passives. That's really cool. Yeah, so moving to the main contention here, it's like the boost of learning English in a short time. We have discussed like how to do it from a teacher perspective and from a student's perspective. And I believe that, as I think I have been repeating this sentence, like in most of the podcasts we've been doing, like practice makes perfect. I tend to repeat it a lot. Yeah. So the idea is that to keep repeating to do it. And if you have the chance of doing, imagine like a really intensive course. We even have a 2-week intensive English course aimed at upgrading your level, not necessarily on working on official exam. We have other courses for that. But if you do, imagine like a couple of hours at least a day for a couple of weeks, you will see the improvement because you are exposed to different vocabulary, you're exposed to different idioms, to different improvisation, to plenty of things. Okay, so that actually awakens your something, in your brain, and after that time you realize that you're almost a native speaker. I'm kidding, you're not a native speaker, but quite fluent. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we are trying to boost our vocabulary as well as our confidence when we're speaking now. Since it's the time, what are we going to do during summer?
Yeah, well, during summer, we're going to be using, we're going to be doing plenty of plans on our free time, in summer. But the idea is that if one of the plans is to learn English, right, is to actually make it fun, make it fun, and don't make it as if it were an extra thing that's dragging you, just enjoy it as if you're actually going to the swimming pool. Enjoy the class and go to enjoyable courses where you're having fun, when you're laughing, where you're moving, dynamic things, where you leave with a smile on your face. Okay, and of course you learn plenty of things. For example, in summer, like many lessons we have are focused on summer vocabulary, right?
Yeah.
So how to learn how to say andar descalzo por la playa. Okay, you go barefoot, or how do you say refrescarse? Well, you cool off, and there's so many expressions and so many ways of grasping grammar and use of English along with vocabulary, and use them in an oral production. There are so many ways of doing it, and they're really enjoyable.
Great. So why don't we actually focus a little bit on that, since people are going to be either on the beach, or perhaps they are gonna stay on their cities or something like that. Mm-hmm. However, the same thing is going to be that you're in summer. So let's talk about a little bit more about that. I've said we have to make it fun so we don't feel like we are missing out on our holidays.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, something that I really want to focus on is the heat.
The heat.
Yeah. I want to talk about the elephant in the room, especially if you're living in Madrid.
Yeah, it's true.
It gets so hot. So
boiling in August. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so scorching hot. That's another one that I really fancy. And it's like so dramatic. It's like scorching hot. I believe that it makes me feel like identified.
Yeah. But you can always find your place in the sun. I'm saying because to find the place in the sun is like a situation which makes you happy, right? So if you find your place in the sun, make getting to go to boosting your English in August in Madrid might be a place in the sun because you actually enjoy it. If it's a nice, fun drive, like your course. Your course is a nice drive. Okay, you can find your place in the sun. Yeah,
well, another thing is that if you are like getting really hot, then you can just like try to use a couple of sentences like idioms. Now there's one that actually translates equally in Spanish. I believe like I'm sweating like a pig.
I'm sweating like a pig. Yeah.
So that's another thing that we can use, a bunch of similes, or like is hot as An oven. An oven.
Okay, sorry. I went the other way.
So those are things that you can like pretty much just say on the go, like when you're like, I don't know, if you're going to the beach before you cool off in the ocean and all that, you can say, oh my God, I'm sweating like a pig and something like that. And so those kind of like just minor details are they keep you in the mindset of like, oh, actually I'm having fun or I'm doing something else. I'm not actually just like in front of a book or something like that. I'm going and have fun while I am practicing my English. And since I am in the context of summer, well, why don't we use these expressions?
Yeah, definitely. And then if you are to travel abroad and stuff, those words are going to be really helpful. Or
Exactly.
Okay, so going back to the main point here, everything boils down to the things we have said, right? Like motivation, repetition, improvisation, plenty of nice vocabulary, something to get acquainted to. And at the same time, to encountering someone who actually guides you pretty well on this drive, of actually learning English.
Yeah. One last detail, try to find a friend to do this with. Everything is more fun.
Yeah, definitely. Friends and traveling abroad and talking to people, foreigners or whatever, that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah. Especially if it's summer and you're at the beach, I'm not trying to make people go in the alcoholic route. However, like a couple of beers have said that are actually quite helpful when it comes to feeling.
Yeah, I mean the Dutch courage, right?
Exactly.
Like, okay, I gain courage because I'm a bit tipsy now, and I don't know. It makes miracles and so on.
Yeah.
Just a bit tipsy.
Yeah, but don't get too carried away. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to be understood in any kind of language.
What?
Okay, so yeah, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Well, just the fact that whoever feels like embarking on this nice adventure of learning English in a short period of time, having this boost of English in summer, they can count on us. And we're going to be here for you, delivering really nice, interesting, dynamic, tailored classes. And and if you cannot make it, please go to our YouTube channel and see all our material we have there, like plenty of really nice videos on vocabulary, use of English, working on your listening skills, and so on.
Okay, so there you have it. Okay, so now I'm going to take a little break and then I'm going to come back to explain this a little bit better, especially those really nice expressions that perhaps might have gotten away from somebody's ears. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on today, Rox.
Thank you, and see you in the next one.
Yeah, of course.
Bye.
Bye.
Hola, aquí estoy de regreso y para empezar a hablar de esta larga entrevista podemos decir que Rox y yo nos enfocamos en hablar de tips para darle un empujón a nuestro aprendizaje del inglés en poco tiempo y damos nuestra opinión en cómo hacerlo más ameno. Eso sí, hay que acotar que no estamos vendiendo humo, por lo que yo uso la palabra disclaimer, es decir, negar que con este podcast podrán adquirir fluidez en 5 minutos. Aunque parezca un poco trivial, es vital que hablemos y conversemos en inglés, ya que muchas veces se nos hace más sencillo entender a otros al hablar, leer o escribir, pero a la hora de la producción oral nos quedamos un poco atascados. Entonces, sin importar el contexto, animamos a transmitir o convey esas palabras que tengamos en nuestro léxico, ya que esto nos ayuda a interiorizar y a aprender a conjugar de forma apropiada los verbos. Pero lo más importante es to utter those words o pronunciar esas palabras. Por otro lado, hay que tratar de not get overwhelmed o tratar de no abrumarse por los pequeños errores que puedan cometer, ya que se está dando el paso de poder comunicarse, que es lo que principalmente buscamos. Luego Rox nos comenta que, por otro lado, hay personas que tienen bastante soltura a la hora de hablar, pero con las que se nos complica más corregir los errores que puedan tener, por lo que, como maestros, hay que estar muy atentos a los fallos de nuestros alumnos. Es fundamental que ellos también estén al tanto de cómo van expresándose. Rox supone que it boils down to, o se resume a un tema de personalidad de cada uno. Hay que encontrar un equilibrio. No se trata de hablar, sino también de saber prestar atención o cómo te expresas. Ahora, en un punto más práctico, para conseguir un poco más de fluidez, Rox en primer lugar nos dice que the bedrock o la base de conversaciones fluidas es el vocabulario, y para ello nos recomienda leer mucho. También habría que tener en cuenta que aunque nos cueste, hay que hacer uso del vocabulario que nos dé nuestro profesor en las clases dependiendo de nuestro nivel. Yo agrego que una buena técnica es que cada nueva palabra que agreguemos en nuestro glosario la utilicemos en al menos 3 oraciones. Esta repetición con la palabra en contexto distinto nos ayudará muchísimo a que se nos queden con más facilidad. Por otro lado, hay que buscar divertirse mientras aprendemos, y si estamos hablando o practicando con temas de nuestro interés, recordar y utilizar palabras o expresiones se nos hace ameno. Otra buena idea es, al principio, tratar de buscar ideas generales hasta estar familiarizado o be acquainted, como dice Rox, para dar el siguiente paso para luego poder transmitir ideas más complejas. Así que bueno, tenemos que estar motivados y familiarizados con los temas de conversación y practicar la repetición. Aunque a priori pueda parecer un poco mecánico, definitivamente tendrá su payoff. Hay que fomentar asimismo un poco más la improvisación. Yo considero que es una buena idea practicar creando pequeñas historias con algunas palabras al azar. Aunque suene silly, con el tiempo se podrán lograr historias más complejas o que las ideas vengan a la cabeza más rápido. Aunque hay muchas maneras de practicar la improvisación, según Rox se pueden hacer juegos a partir de un prompt. Se le dice una frase al alumno y él o ella empieza a improvisar a partir de esa frase. O por el contrario, se le da una oración. El alumno crea una historia e independientemente de cómo vaya a terminar, su historia debe terminar con dicha oración. Además de ayudarnos con nuestro aprendizaje del idioma, a Rox le apasiona que estas actividades también nos ayudan a desarrollar nuestras habilidades cognitivas, como nuestra atención o la creatividad. Uno de ellos es usar una pelota de papel y aleatoriamente lanzarla a alguien, y quien la atrape, improvise una oración con el tema que se vea en clases. Por ejemplo, la voz pasiva. Personalmente estaría bastante nervioso, al menos al principio, lo cual Rox considera bastante normal. Que se nos dé cold feet, es decir, perdamos confianza, o we would like to chicken out, que querramos no involucrarnos por miedo. Pero bueno, tener estos rapports o entendimiento positivo en las clases tiende a derivar a ser amigos y perdamos un poco la timidez, un tipo de ambiente que siempre procuramos tener en el Salón de Idiomas. Una manera que considero efectiva para practicar la improvisación es que empecemos dando solo ideas generales y luego enfaticemos mejor el tema poniéndonos a nosotros de ejemplos. Rox añade que esto también nos puede ayudar a ganar tiempo, cosa que por cierto es muy útil en los exámenes oficiales, aunque a ella le gusta más jugar con lo desconocido. Ahora, para todos los maestros out there, tenemos siempre que tener en cuenta el feedback. Por su lado, Rox considera que es importante dar críticas constructivas que sean más grupales en lugar de enfocarnos en un solo estudiante y así no se sienta singled out o que se sienta que se le trata de manera distinta a los demás, y cuando uno está recibiendo correcciones sobre nuestro desempeño, pues esta distinción puede resultar incómoda, ¿verdad? En mi caso, yo utilizo una técnica llamada feedback sandwich, que básicamente es dar feedback negativo entre 2 partes de feedback positivo, que me parece que ayuda a que las personas no se sientan que lo están haciendo todo mal, ya que prácticamente nunca es el caso. El simple hecho de intentar ya es positivo. No hace falta decir que hay que mantener la constancia, tratar de tener el aprendizaje presente. Practice makes perfect, como siempre decimos en el Salón de Idiomas. Ahora, ya que estamos en el verano, podemos usar este contexto para tener presente el idioma, pero no lo tomen como una tarea, busquen disfrutarlo. Así, no sentimos que estamos perdiéndonos nuestras vacaciones o missing out our holidays. Ahora, no podemos ignorar al elefante en la habitación, the elephant in the room, ya que el verano también es sinónimo de mucho calor, especialmente aquellos que viven en Madrid o más al sur. Aquí usamos expresiones como it's boiling, que literalmente sería como hirviendo, o scorching hot, algo así como calor abrasador, pero de brasas, no de abrazos. Y luego Rox usa la expresión we can find our place in the sun, haciendo un juego de palabras, play on words, pun o dad jokes, ya que como ella explica, esta expresión significa que estamos en una situación deseada, donde estamos felices y bueno, es in the sun. Get it? Please don't unsubscribe. Yo honestamente Soy más team frío, so it's more challenging for me to find my place in the sun while I'm in the sun. Otra expresión que podemos utilizar seguido estos días sería I'm sweating like a pig, sudando como un cerdo, o it's hot as an oven, caliente como un horno. Esta expresión tiene otra versión bastante común que es un poco menos family friendly, así que si se sienten curiosos siempre pueden consultarle a Google. Volviendo al tema principal, Rox nos dice de nuevo It boils down to. Y aquí perdí una oportunidad de oro para hacer un pun, ya que boil significa hierve, así que todo hierve a que, lo que vuelve a ser lo mismo, que se reduce a Isn't it hilarious? Bueno, se resume a motivación, repetición, vocabulario del cual familiarizarse, mientras encontramos a alguien que nos pueda guiar con esto. También podemos siempre hacer esto con amigos. Por otro lado, no queremos fomentar hábitos viciosos, pero también se ha dicho que tomar unas cervecitas puede ayudarte a perder un poco la timidez y ayudarte a hablar más fluido. Se le conoce como Dutch courage, pero don't get too carried away. No se dejen llevar mucho, o si no, no se les va a entender ni en inglés ni en español. Y bueno, ya con eso terminaríamos de explorar la entrevista. Así que yo espero que hayan disfrutado muchísimo este episodio y espero que disfruten mucho más sus vacaciones y que si de repente tienen un poco de tiempo y quisieran mejorar un poquito su inglés, aquí quiero que sepan que en el Salón de Idiomas tenemos las puertas abiertas para que puedan practicar las lecciones que ustedes necesiten con más tailored classes o clases adaptadas. Así que los esperamos y los espero para un nuevo episodio. Take care. Bye. Esto ha sido una producción del Salón de Idiomas. Se reservan todos los derechos.